Okay, so in our last session, we have talked about what we have talked about. I don't even remember. Uh, to do app, correct? Yeah, that's pretty good. So did everybody try it out? It worked? Nice, awesome. Okay, so in our today's session, we'll be talking about directives. We'll talk about component lifecycle a little later, and then we'll talk about directives first. So your directives basically are the ones that we have already used some directives. Like for example, we have used the ngIf, the ngFor. Those are all directives. Your ngStyle, ngClass are some of the directives. Your directives actually provides instructions to your AngularJS framework to perform certain operation. Okay, there are two types of directives. One is your attribute directives. The second one is your structured directives. Your attribute directives controls mostly the styles of your DOM element, look and feel of your DOM element. Those are your attribute directives. Have your ng style, ng class, where you add some styles and other stuff. That's your attribute directive. They concentrate on the appearance and the behavior of the DOM element. Whereas your structured directives controls your DOM structure, the DOM layout. Your ngIf, your ngFor are some of the very good examples. You have your ng switch case is one of the other ones. Okay, that's your structured directive. Okay, so we have already seen your ngFor directive. Your ngFor directive is used for iterating over a set of elements. And then we have already looked at ngIf directive. Your ngIf directive basically is a conditional check. You check if the condition is true, it will come inside. If not, it's not going to come inside. Alrighty, let's take a look at your ngFor directive a little bit more. Okay, so this is one of the small thing that I wanted to mention. So when you're iterating over using your ngFor, you can actually access the index of your element. So after your let city of cities, you put a semicolon and then you write let I equal to index. Your I basically refers to your index. So your index starts at 0. It will go until for example, if you wanted to print out the index, you can always do that. You can just say, yeah, I wanted to print out the index. Say I dash city. Alrighty, let's save that. Now let's see the app in the browser. HTTP localhost 4200. Okay, here if you see we got 0, 1, 2, Coppell, Argyle and Irvine. Got it? So that's how you access your index of your element in an iteration. You say let I equal to index and you can access it. Okay, so we can actually write this in a little different way. We can break down this for loop like below. So here, so when you do a for loop, what it actually does is it creates a template element. The template is called ng template. It encloses your li inside your ng template, and then it basically does, let's remove this from here. We're gonna write ng template ngFor, then we write let dash city, and then we write ngFor of equal to cities, and we write let dash I equal to index. Alrighty, let's see if this is working. No, not working. Let's see. Okay, I missed something there. Alright. Oh yeah, I didn't close it. ng template. Alrighty, if you see we got the same output 0, 1 and 2. See if we take a look at that a little closer. So when you write your ngFor, so this is what your Angular does. It will enclose your li inside a template tag, your ng template tag. Okay, and then your star ngFor has been broken down into ngFor. Your let city will become let hyphen city, and then your off cities becomes your ngFor off equal to your cities collection that you wanted to iterate over. Your let I equal to index become let dash I equal to index. So that's how it will break down your for loop. So behind the scenes, it creates your ng template. So instead of writing this complicated way, so it basically provides a syntactical sugar where you use your star ng for, and then you just write let city of cities, let I equal to index. So behind the scenes, it'll enclose your li inside an ng template. Okay, so that's how you basically break down your ng for. So we can also break down your ng if. So that's how we write your ng if. The same way, you need to enclose it inside your template, ng template, right? If you're using Angular 2, then it's ng template, regular template, but if you're using Angular 4, it's ng template. So this is one of the change. They made it to Angular 4. So they renamed this template to ng template. So ng template, we can write dev. And then we can basically write, instead of, we just can copy this. And we can put it on the top. Then we can remove your star. And then we can do a property binding. ng if equal to employee.active, employee.firstname. If employee is active, I wanted to print out the first name. Let's see if that actually works. You see, I got Mikey printed 2 times. Mikey and Mikey. Nice. Okay, so that's another syntactical sugar. Instead of writing your ng template, we can always do star ng if. So in most of your code, you'll write star ng if, but just wanted to let you know that this is what happens behind the scenes. It creates your ng, it encloses your dev inside an ng template, and will move your star ng if to itself, and then we'll change it to your property binding ng if. Alrighty, next take a look at our another directive that we haven't seen so far is your switch case directive. So let's create a dev, and then let's do ng switch ng switch. Let me make sure that I have the syntax correct. ng switch, correct. ng switch equal to the property that you wanted to pass to your switch case. Let's say I wanted to pass my employee.state. Okay, your employee is your object. Inside your component, you basically have your state defined as address.state defined as Texas. So I need to change that. It should be employee.address.state. Address.state. What? Oh, I have a typo. Got it. Employee.address.state. Okay, so let's say I wanted to display a dev. If my employee state is a star ng switch switch case equal to, if it matches, let's say if it matches Texas string. Okay, I wanted to print out the employee is a Texan. 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 I'm going to just copy that, another one. Okay, let's say if this employee state is New York, I'm going to say employee is a New Yorker. New Yorker. Okay, your switch case basically have a default case that you write, right? We write that as well. ng switch case, ng switch default. ng switch default, say employee is not a Texan, not a New Yorker. Okay, that completes my dev. So we don't write your break statements here, because when one of the switch case is matched, it will not execute the other ones. And this is your default case. Alrighty, let's take a look if this is working. Okay, we got an error. Okay, let's see what it is. No provider for template ref. What the heck was that? must have missed something. I think is it happening because of, let's remove this div and see if that is happening, and then we'll put it back. Okay, so that's the one causing the problem. Okay, now I know that. Okay, let's make sure that we are syntactically correct. So star, I missed a star here. Star ng switch default. Now I think that should take care of it. Yeah, that is the reason why it was looking for the template. If you see, I got the employee is a Texan because employee.address.state is set to Texas in your app component. Okay, if you just change that to New York, it will print out employee is a New Yorker. Okay, the employee is a New Yorker. Okay, the same way we can break down our ngIf to your ng template and then ng-for to ng template. We can also break down your switch to. So this is how we do it. So here instead of template, you write ng-template. Okay, each and every div here, if you see, it is enclosed inside your template tag. Okay, instead of writing this, you write ng-template. Oh, I got that in a wrong place. ng-template. ng-template. Okay, you can try that out. So it's very simple. Okay, that looks good. Now let's take a look at how to create your custom directives. So if you have to create your own directive like your ng class or something like that, okay, how would we do that? Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a directive. So the directive, I'm going to have the directive inside this common folder. I created a common folder. If you see, there is nothing inside this. If you see, when I expand it, it does not show anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a directive there. So let's say view integrated terminal. Let's write clear. So the way you create your directive is actually very simple. Basically write ng gd d for your directive. If you say I'm inside my common folder, this is the location where I want to create my directive. ng generate directive. The name of my directive is highlight. Okay, I don't want a test file to be created. I'm going to say dash spec equal to false. So this should create a directive inside your common folder, and if you see, it also updated your app module as well. Under declarations, it will also update it. So let's go and check that out. It created your highlight directive. Let me close this one. Okay, and then it registered my directive inside my app module. See, app module declarations, I have my highlight directive here. Okay, it added that import automatically for me. And my highlight directive, if you see here, I have a directive decorator and I have a selector. Just looks like same like your component. But here you'll not have any template or template URL parameters for your directive. Okay, so what I wanted to do is, so wherever I wanted to highlight a particular line or a particular div or a particular span, I'm going to use this directive. When I put this directive on my HTML element, so it will show a background color of green or blue or whatever that is that you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a small property here. Background color. Okay, my background color, it's a string. I'm going to set this to yellow. YELLO. It's an yellow background that I want for my highlight color. Cool. The next thing that you need to do is you need to create a get method. I'm going to say get color, and I'm going to say return this dot background color. It's not doing anything, just a getter method. It's just a get method, it's returning your background color. Here you need to write an annotation or decorator called host binding annotation. I'm going to import that host binding annotation. So what does this host binding annotation does is it will bind this particular color to your host element. So wherever the host element is the element that you are adding this directive on, so that becomes your host element. host binding. I wanted to add a style dot background color. This is your CSS style. So in your CSS style you have background hyphen color, but here when you define it, you need to define it as a camel case. Style dot background color. So my directive looks pretty good. Now let's go ahead and apply this directive and see how it actually works. So let's copy the selector. Let's go to your app component HTML. Let's add it to a few of these elements that we have. So let's create another div and test it. Div, end of div. Let's say I wanted to print out employee dot address dot state. I'm going to write some text here as well. The employee state is, and then here I'm going to add that app highlight directive that I created. App highlight. Done. Let's see how it works. App highlight. Okay, if you see, I got a highlighting color. Employee state is New York. If you see, wherever you wanted to see this yellow background, you can just take this app highlight and put inside a div. For example, let's say I have another div that I wanted to apply this. Let's say you can copy this app highlight and you can use it anywhere. Let's say I wanted to use on this guy. You just add your app highlight. Okay, if you see that employee is a New Yorker is also highlighted now because it got the background color. Okay, so I'm going to remove that from here. You can add it on any HTML element you want. If you wanted to add it on a span tag or div tag or a paragraph tag, you can add it on pretty much. Now what I wanted to do is I'm going to make it even more interesting by modifying this a little more. So what I'm going to do now is, so here my background color is yellow, is kind of like hard coded. So I want user to provide a background color. So I'm going to use that background color. Very simple. Use your input directive, input decorator. You say input. This background color will come as an input. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to say background color. App.component.html highlight. Background color equal to, let's say it's orange. Let's see if that actually works. Alrighty. I could not differentiate between orange and, let's do blue. Okay, if you see, the background color is blue. Okay, so this is how you can pass inputs. If you don't pass this background color input, the default color will come into picture. So this becomes your default color, which is your yellow. Okay, yellow is your default color. Now a user can make use of this directive and they can pass whatever the color they want for their div. Simple. Now let's add a little bit more to this directive. So let's change colors when the user puts a mouse on it. Okay, let's add a different color. I'm going to create a method, mouse enter. You can put whatever the name of the method that you want. Here I'm going to add a few more events, one more directive, host listener directive. Host listener is, it will listen to events on your host. That's what is your host listener. The name itself says it's host listener. What I wanted to listen to event is mouse enter. Mouse enter. I hope that's the correct name. We'll see. Mouse enter. What I want to do is, so here we need to do a little bit more. If you just change this dot background color to something, it won't work. So you need to add a little bit more. You need to add template ref. Let's get the template. Private tf template ref. Template ref actually takes a parameter. It's a generic, so I'm going to just set it to any. Let's see if I can set it. This dot tf dot element ref dot native element dot style dot background color equal to, let's put pink. Mouse enter. So I need to change the background color to pink. Let's see if that actually works. Okay, we have some errors. Let's see what it is. No provider for template ref. So I have something wrong. Let's check the example that I did earlier. Host binding, mouse enter, mouse sleeve. Oh, I have an element ref. Native element dot style dot background color. Okay. So this has to be element ref. Element. I thought I can access element ref from my template ref, but looks like that's not working. Okay, let's add your element ref. Element reference. Let's change that to EF. So we can just say this dot EF dot. Rest of the things should look the same. Native element dot style dot background color. Okay, it's not working. Maybe I got. Let me check the name of my event. Well, everything is lowercase. Mouse enter. Mouse enter. I want the background color to be pink. If you see, I got that working. Same way I can also do for my mouse sleeve. I just copy this. And then you can basically say mouse sleeve. Make sure the event name is correct. Mouse sleeve. I wanted to run this method. Mouse sleeve. I don't know what other colors that we can put. Orange. Okay, when it loads, it comes in blue. Mouse enter, mouse sleeve. Got it? Simple. So that's how we can add some more listeners to your host element. Your host element is wherever you are applying these directive to. Our host element here in this case is the div element where we have applied this directive. Okay, we have your host binding, host listener. These are the important ones. Host binding and your host listener. Host listener will listen to the event. If you want, you can actually access the event as well. So here I think I also, so here you just enclose this inside your brackets, and then you can say event. You can access the event object. If you wanted to do some more stuff, I can do that. Event object. Alrighty, that looks good. So let's create an example of your structured directive. So this is your attribute directive. You see, just concentrating on the look and feel. Now let's take a look at your example of your structured directive. View integrated terminal. Let's create another directive. Ng generate directive. I'm going to create the directive as delay. Delay is a directive. Not going to do spec. Spec equal to false. Enter. So what does this delay directive does is this delay directive delays the display of your element. So if you pass in delay the display by 500 seconds or 500 milliseconds, it will just delay it. If you pass 5000, then it will basically delay it for 5 seconds. Okay. Alrighty, let's go ahead and then populate our delay directive. Okay, let's close this one away. We don't need that. Your delay directive basically is going to get an input. I'm going to say input. We are going to write a set method. I'm going to write set time. It's gonna at input decorator. So here it's gonna pass your time, which is of type number. Okay, it's of type number. So what it's gonna do is it's gonna write, we have a set timeout function, right? Set timeout function, that's your comma time, the input that we are getting. I haven't written anything in the body yet, which I'll be doing it very shortly. I'm going to import few other properties, few other classes. One is your view container ref, view container ref, template ref. Okay, I'm going to define them here inside my constructor. Say private VCF view container ref colon the data type, view container ref TF colon template container template ref. I will define them as private so that I can use them in my functions. So this is a generic type. I need to specify a type here. I'm going to just say it as any. So after the timeout is done, so if you see, this is your arrow function. You can write a function as well here, function of anonymous function, but this is an arrow function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this dot VCF dot create embedded view of this dot template ref TF. Okay, what it's basically saying is take your template that you need to render and then add it to the view. That's what it is saying basically. But let's see if this actually works. App delay. Since this is a structured directive, we have to use it with your star. Let's go to your app component HTML. Let's take this guy. Let's city of cities. Let's add it here. Have your span here. Let's remove this I. I don't need that I. Span star app delay. That's the name of your directive. App delay equal to 500. Okay, 500 milliseconds. After 500 milliseconds is done, it's going to display it. But let's make it a little bit more interesting. We have your I index here, right? So let's do an arithmetic operation. Let's into that. And then we say I plus 1. Because your I starts at 0. So I plus 1, when its I is 0, it will become 1. Okay, understood this? What we are doing? 500 is the input. So this is the arithmetic multiplication operation. We have your index I. I'm just adding 1 to it, so that your cities get displayed one after the other with a little bit of delay. Alrighty, that looks good. Let's try that out. We have an error. No, I think the name of my directive is not correct. App dash delay? No, I don't think so. It should be star app delay for sure. Equal to find it star I plus 1. What is the error? It says can't bind app delay since it isn't a known property of span. Correct. Let me check my example that I created. I missed something. Star app delay. That looks good. What did I miss? Let's take a look at our app module one more time. Your delete directive, delete directive. Since it isn't a known property of span, how come it's not able to find the app delete directive? What did I miss? So let's stop this one more time and try. Can't find to app delete. Alrighty, I don't know what the problem is. Well, I'll probably have to check that later. I'm going to remove that for now. But that's how you generally create your structured directives. You basically create the directive the same way you create your other directives. So here you basically use your view container reference and your template reference, and this is how you do it. Basically, here is an example where it takes the time as an input, and then it displays it after the time has passed out. That's your set timeout regular JavaScript function. There's nothing in there. And your view container reference, it has a method called create embedded view. It basically takes your template ref and then will add it. Okay, alrighty, moving on. Yeah, I'll check why it's not working later. We'll take a look at debugging a little later. So what you can do is because your directives, like you generally wanted to share it across multiple modules, you should probably create a directives module and put all the directives in there, and then you can import that module in any module you want. So that way you don't have your app module, because I'm registering everything to app module, but if I have a course module or a to-do module or an other module, if I want to use the directives, I have to import the app module. So that is not really good. So you can create your own module and then register the directives there and then import that particular module. Okay, alrighty, that's one other thing. So here Augury is actually an extension, a Chrome extension. You go to your Google Chrome tools and then here I think you can say Augury, Augurey, I guess, Chrome extension. Augury Chrome extension. You go to Chrome Web Store. So this is one very cool tool that you can use for your Angular debugging on your browser. So if you have any issues or if you wanted to take a look at the JavaScript code that is generated, you can even debug your TypeScript as well using this particular tool. Add extension. It's adding it to Chrome. Augury has been added to Chrome. Here it is, Augury. You'll see this particular icon here that tells you that it's been added. I think you can see them inside your developer tools as well. Here it is, Augury. Okay, it will basically will show you all your components that you have. Color component. Here if you see, you can view the component state. Okay, what are the component state values that are rendered. Okay, these are the inputs that I have passed. And then if you click on, let's say, user list component, we can view the source of your user list component. Okay, it does not have anything. App user list, it's a blank component. It's not doing anything. It's just printing out user list works. If you see, you have your app component. The rest of all the components are your children of your app component. You have your test component. Test component is not doing anything as well. Have your paragraph, that's where you have your ng style is being applied. If you see, this one has ng class. This div basically has ng switch. That's your highlight directive. Okay, you can view the state of your highlight directive as well. If you see, the background color is blue. You can view the element ref property as well. You can see what is it values and other stuff, I guess. Yeah, I have not used this much, but I think this is supposed to help you to a very great deal in identifying any issues that you have. Okay, we'll take a look at that later and deeper. You can see your router tree, all the modules that you have that you are using: browser module, forms module, user module. It gives you more information about your modules as well. That's your Augury tool. Okay, you can install that as a Chrome extension. Now let's talk about your services. Okay, so we have seen components, we have seen directives. The next thing that we'll be talking about is, we have talked about modules. Now we'll be talking about services. So services in Angular are basically is used, it basically plays multiple responsibilities. Two important responsibilities are your making calls to your backend. So for example, if you wanted to get, for example, in our to-dos application, say initially, like, when I load my to-dos, when I refresh my to-do application, it always comes empty, correct? Because it's starting with an empty array. So let's say if it wants to get the data from your server, okay, the server logic code that you wanted to write, you write inside your service. I will create a to-do service, and then I will use that to-do service to make a backend call. Okay, and if you have multiple components that wanted to use the same data, okay, and instead of copying that in multiple components, you can basically move the data to your service, and you can use that service across components. Okay, it basically promotes your data reuse. So multiple components want same data, then I'm going to put that inside the service, and I'm going to inject the service inside my components, and then I'm going to use that service. Okay, that's one of the classical usage of your services. Okay, and in order to create a service, it's actually very simple. Let's take a look at your service. So let me show you a very small example. Let's open our to-do app that we have created. Alrighty, let's kill this guy. Alrighty, let's go to file, open folder. Okay, this is your to-do app that we have worked on, correct? So let's bring in service into the picture. So we have our to-do module, correct? Inside your to-do module, we have a to-do list component. A to-do list component basically is the one which will display the data in the form of a list. It's going to get these to-dos from somewhere else. That's your to-do page component. Your to-do page component is providing the list of to-dos that it needs to display. But if you see, initially we are starting with an empty array. Let's say I wanted to pre-populate this array and then show, initially when I load it, I wanted to show some data. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, so there are a couple of ways to do this. We can hard code the data right here. You can basically say I wanted to display, so let me make sure that I have the right property names, description and status. I'm going to say description equal to some description and status equal to some status. True. And I'm going to say description equal to, let's put shopping. This is one of my to-do item. I'm going to comma, and then I'm going to say to copy another object. I'm going to put lawn moving. Now I'm going to say status equal to true. Okay, if you see, I pre-populated my data. So let's bring up this app and see the data. Let's cd to do ng serve. Chunk asset optimization done. Compile successfully. Now let's load our app. Okay, if you see, when the app is loaded, you already have shopping and moving. So when you refresh it, you'll see that data always, right? So we pre-populated our to-dos. Okay, so generally what do we do is, so we get this data from a server. Like, component will not have hard-coded data, right? So for example, you are working on an employee app, so you get this list of employees from a database. From your database, they'll come to your Java code, and from Java code, it will send the data in the form of JSON to your UI, and your UI will display it. Okay, we don't hard code them. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this from here. Let's keep it for now. I'm going to create a service in my to-do folder. Let's create a service. So I'm inside my to-do folder. I wanted to generate a service. Ng generate service. The name of the service is to-do service. It's created in my app folder. Where is it? I created it here. Let's delete this file. Delete. Go to recycle bin, the spec file that I have. Oh, I'm at my root folder. I'm not inside the this app to do folder. So that's why it created it here. Okay, let's delete that one as well and recreate that. Delete. Move to recycle bin. Okay, cd source app. Inside this I have it to do folder. Let's clear that guy. Let's run that command one more time. ng generate service to do dash dash spec equal to false. Okay, it created our service. We have here to do service. Inside this to do service, I'm going to copy whatever I have in my component, to do page component. Let's copy this to do list from here to my to do service. Okay, I need to import my to do. Let's import the to do as well. Let's copy the import statement as well. Import to do to my to do service. Okay, if you see, this is your service class. It has an annotation called injectable. We'll talk about that injectable in a little while. So you have your to-do list. The to-do list basically have some data. Let's create it as a private list so that nobody can access it directly. And then write a function or a method, get to-dos. It's a function. I'm going to say return this dot to-do list. Okay, now inside your to-do page component, what we need to do is, so we can remove the stuff from here. It's an empty array to start with. So here we need to import our to-do service. Let's import it. Import from /to-do.service. And then we are going to say import to-do service. Import to-do service from /to-do.service. Okay, then we can basically, in the constructor, I'm going to inject it as a dependency. I'm going to say private to-do service colon to-do service. Okay, so when you have it this way, what your Angular does is, when it creates an object for your to-do page component, it has to obviously create it using constructor. It will come to your constructor. It figures out, okay, my to-do component, page component requires or depends upon my to-do service. So what it does is, it will create an instance of your to-do service and will inject it. It will set this property to a new object of your to-do service. So that way you can use your to-do service anywhere inside this application. Okay, understood? Inside your constructor, we are specifying the dependency of your to-do page component. The dependency of your to-do page component is your to-do service. Okay, when Angular creates an instance of your to-do page component, it will create an instance of your to-do service and will inject this automatically. Okay, we don't have to say this dot to-do service equal to new to-do service. We don't have to do that. Angular automatically knows that, okay, this is a dependency that my component depends on. It will create that automatically and will inject it. So this type of injection is called dependency injection in AngularJS. The dependencies will get injected automatically. You just have to define them inside your constructor, and it will get injected automatically. So there is one other small thing that we have to do. We have to also define our to-do service inside your provider section. Providers to-do service. Okay, so you have to define it under your providers as well, your services. So when you define your providers under, the reason why we define providers is because by default if you don't specify anything, it will create them as singletons. Okay, single instances. So all your application will have one single instance. But you define that inside your component provider, you're telling Angular that, you know what, I want a new instance of my to-do service. So it will create a new object and then we'll inject it. Okay, that's what your provider section here actually does. It's a way of telling your Angular, you know what, I want you to create a new instance for me of my to-do service, providers to-do service. Now, what we'll do is a couple of ways to set it. Here we can directly say to-do service dot get to-dos equal to, let's try that. This dot to-do service dot get to-dos. That would return your to-dos from your service, and your component should display it. Let's try that. Okay, if you see, your component is talking to your service, getting the data and displaying it. Okay, very simple. So the advantage that you get by putting that, defining the to-do service, let's say if another component want to get your to-dos, it will just inject that to-do service inside its constructor and can start using it. Very simple. Okay, this basically is your data sharing. If you have multiple components want to share the data, so they put it inside your service. Got it? Alrighty. So this service also will talk to your backend to get your data, but I'll show that to you later. And this injectable annotation here tells your AngularJS that this to-do service can itself has dependencies. Okay, to-do service might depend upon another service. Okay, that's what is your injectable annotation does. A good example is your AngularJS provides an inbuilt service called HTTP. Using your HTTP service, you can make a backend call to get the data. But here I have hard-coded this data in my to-do service. But when I want to get this data from a server, so what I need to do is I need to define a constructor inside my to-do service. I already have it here. I need to define HTTP as a dependency. In order to use HTTP as a dependency, you need to have your injectable annotation here. Okay, so what it is basically saying is your to-do service can have its own dependencies and they will get injected to your constructor. Okay, for this example we really don't need your injectable annotation. We can just remove it. It will still work because your to-do service is not depending upon anything else. Okay, your services are especially handy whenever you wanted to have multiple components want to share the data. Instead of duplicating the data, you can define the data inside your service and you can inject that your service as a dependency to your components. Alrighty, that actually looks good. I'm trying to think if I can show you an example where two components depends upon this data. Let's create another component. Whatnot. Let's create a component, ng generate component. I wanted to use, let's say, to-do dashboard component. Let's name that to-do dashboard component. To-do dashboard dash flat dash it dash is. So inside the to-do folder, I'm going to create another component called to-do dashboard component. So this to-do dashboard component is created. It also created a spec file. I'm going to get rid of that for now. Let's move that to recycle bin. Now you have a to-do dashboard component. Let's say this component also want to access your to-do service. It will just display your to-do count. That's it. It's not going to do anything. So here what I'm going to do is inside my constructor, I'm going to say private to-do service colon to-do service. So of course I need to import it, which I'll be doing it pretty shortly. So you understood why we are using private here. If you use private, you don't have to define a variable. And we don't have to do this dot to-do service equal to to-do service. We don't have to do that. Let's import your to-do service as well. Let's copy that import from here. Import to-do dashboard component here. Okay, that should take care of it. So let's say this displays a count. Count is your number equal to this dot to do service dot get to do's dot size length, right? Array dot length. I got that wrong. Okay, length of your array. So here I'm going to say to do dashboard works. I wanted to display the total number of to do's is the count that I have. Okay, I created my to do component. Now here actually you need to define your provider section as well. Providers colon. Here I'm going to define your to do service. To do service. Providers colon to do service. Now your Angular knows that okay, it needs to create a new instance of the to do service and has to inject that inside your constructor, so that your component to do dashboard component will have access to your to do service instance. Okay, here the instance that it creates here is different than the instance that it creates in your to do page component. That we need to be aware of. Very important. Okay, so it created your to do service and then it must have added to your to do module as well. Let's see if it's there inside your declarations. No, it's not. Yeah, because it doesn't do that, because it's not required. No issues. Now what I want to do is I wanted to render this to do dashboard component as well. I'm going to go to my to do page component and also will include that to do dashboard component that I created. To do dashboard. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it inside my to do page component HTML. So here I'm going to say this. Let's copy this guy and put it here. Slash to do dashboard component. Okay, let's see if that actually works. We see the total number of to do's is 2. Okay, so if you see I have two components using that service that I have. If I want, I can actually create another method here, like get count, and I can say this dot to do list dot size, and I can call the get count method wherever I want. Okay, now let's do a little bit more. Now here what we'll try to do is, so enter a to do item. Let's add a to do item and see what happens. Okay, let's say I wanted to play. Let's add it. If you see, your playing is added to your to do list, but your count is not changed. Your count is 2 because the instance that you have here is different than the to do service instance that you have here. This instance still sees the value as 2 because this is a brand new object. This is a different object compared to the object that you have here for your to do list component that it is using. Now in order to have only one single instance for my to do page, there's a way to do it. Let's go to your to do page component. Here you can actually remove your providers. Let's get rid of this guy. Understood why it is behaving that way? Because we have two separate instances. Your to do page component instance of your to do service, the to do service object which is used by your to do page component, is different than the to do dashboard to do service. We have two new objects. Okay, now what we are going to do is, instead of doing it this way, I want both of them to sync, so I'm going to use just one instance. I'm going to remove that here, and I'm going to go to my to do dashboard component. I'm going to get rid of that provider section from here. Now I'm going to go to my to-do module here. Here I'm going to provide my provider section, and I'm going to say providers. I'm going to define it at my module level. To do service. I need to import it. Let's import that. To do dashboard component. Let's copy this import and go to your to do module and then import your service. Let's add a comma here. That should take care of that error. Now when you define your service, when you register your service at your module level, your Angular knows that okay, this entire module requires only one instance of my to do service. So all the components will get that one single service it has. But if your component wants a different one, you can always define your provider section here. Okay, so I removed the provider section from my dashboard component. Let me make sure that I removed it from my to-do page component as well. Okay, it's not there here as well. Okay, everything looks good now. Let's play that one more time. Playing. Click on add. So we got playing, but we still have 2 here. Alrighty. Let's see why is that. Yeah, I think I know that. So the reason because your dashboard component doesn't know that there is a change happened for your to-dos. So your dashboard component, it has to listen to the changes. So let's see, let's change it. Let's go to your to-do service. Let's add an event emitter. Private. Private. No, it should not be private, it should be public. Public. New to-do added event. New to-do added event. It's of type event emitter. Event emitter of, it could be any, it's fine. Equal to new event emitter. So whenever there is change to your to-dos, so one second, let's remove that here. I think I know why it didn't work. Let's say to-do page component. So let's see the way we are adding it. We are adding it to the component, but your service doesn't know that there is a new to-do added. Let's add a new to-do here. Let's add a method, add a to-do object. Okay, this basically receives the new object that you wanted to add. To-do, it's of type to-do. Okay, what this one is gonna do is it's gonna say this dot to-do list dot push of the to-do that it received. Now we are going to call this add to do method from your to do page component. Here we are doing to do list dot push, right? So instead of doing it here, I think I already have that here, and we'll just add it here. Okay, and then in your to do page component we can just say this dot to do service dot add to do, and you can pass the to do object that you want to add. Okay, because your data modification, when you do it in your component, your service is not aware of it, because your service is providing the data, so that is a location where you need to update it. So here I updated my to do service to dos with the new object that I have. Alrighty, now let's test that to see if it affects anything. Okay, let's add playing. Okay, now if you see, we have the same behavior, but here the count is still 2. Okay, let's change that. Now whenever there is a new to do added, we need to let the dashboard component know that, you know what, we have a new to do added now, you need to update yourself. So we can do that by actually emitting an event. Let's emit an event. Public new to do added event, it's of type event emitter. Let's copy this guy and then add it to your here. That should take care of that one. So here when there is a new event, can say this dot new to do added event dot emit. So it's not really passing anything, it's just emitting the event. Now what we can do is our to do dashboard component can actually subscribe to this event. So we are talking about event subscription now. Okay, let's do that. So before we do that, let's talk a little bit about your onInit method. So what this onInit method actually does is, we say this is an interface, that's why we are implementing it. Your dashboard component implements your onInit interface. This is an interface. We have a method called ngOnInit that we have to override. Otherwise it's going to complain. If you see, it's complaining because when you implement an interface, you have to override the methods the same way as in your Java language. So here, once my component is initialized, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this dot to do service dot new to do add event dot subscribe. I'm going to subscribe to it. When I subscribe to it, I'm going to get the new data. So right now it's not doing anything. So that's why your function parameter is nothing. Otherwise, you'll have, if it emits an event, and if it emits an event with data, you can add a data property here to receive the data. Okay, here it's not doing anything. I'm going to just subscribe to that event. Okay, when this event actually happens, what you need to do? What I need to do is I need to say this dot count equal to this dot to do service dot get to do's dot length. I need to change the count variable to the new length. Okay, I subscribe to the event. So whenever there is a new to do add event emitted from my service, your component will get that event and then will update the count accordingly. Okay, now let's try that one more time. I hope that works. Okay, now if you see, I got 3 as my count. Okay, understood? So what is happening here? We are basically our dashboard component and your to-do page component using one single instance of your to-do service. And your to-do service, when in your to-do page component, whenever it needs to add a to-do, it tells your service to do that. You know what? I got a new to-do from my child, one of my child components. You know what? Just update the to-do array with the latest to-do that I have. And your to-do service, it will add the to-do to the list and it will emit an event. So that way your components can listen to the events. So the name of the event is your new to-do added event. A new to-do added event, your dashboard component is listening to that event. It's subscribed to that event. And whenever there is, that event happened, you basically have to do this dot count equal to with the data that you have. Okay. So another way to address this issue is you go to your to-do page component, to-do service. So let's say instead of any, so let's add a number. It emits a number. Here inside the emit method, what we can do is we can say this dot to do list dot length. Now it's emitting your length itself directly. So now inside your to do page, to do dashboard component, here we can have subscribe data this dot count equal to data. Okay, so this data basically is the size of your to-do list. Alrighty, let's see if that is actually working. Let's do a save all. Enter a to-do item. Let's add playing. Add. If you see the count value is changed to 3 again. Okay, understood your event emitter? So what your event emitter is doing, it's emitting an event and your components can listen to that event, subscribe to that event. So whenever the event happens, so the component basically gets notified that there is a new event happened. Okay, and here inside your to do dashboard component, you basically subscribe to that event, and this is your callback function that will get executed when that event happens. Okay, this function will receive your data. So if you don't want, if your arrow functions are confusing, you can actually do function here, function of data. So that function would be called, and the data that is emitted will be set to this function automatically. Okay, so we talked about your onInit method. Your onInit method basically gets executed even before your constructor. Okay, even before your constructor, your onInit method basically gets executed. Once a component is initialized, if you wanted to do something, so that's when you basically do it. I might be wrong. I think the first a constructor will get called and then your onInit method, because if your constructor is not called first, your this.todo service will be undefined, right? Because until your constructor execution is finished, it does not know what your to-do service is. So your constructor execution finishes and then it will execute your onInit method and then will subscribe to that event. The same way we have your onInit method, we also have your onDestroy lifecycle event that we can use. OnDestroy. Let's import your onDestroy. Control V, and then we can basically do ng onDestroy. ng on destroy, I guess. Say this dot to do service dot new to do event dot unsubscribe. I subscribe to the event, but when the component is destroyed, I wanted to unsubscribe to that event. So you do that inside your ng onDestroy. When the component is destroyed, I want you to unsubscribe the event. So that way I don't get any more notifications. When the component is created, it will subscribe to it. When the component is destroyed, it will get unsubscribed to it. So the component, the component basically gets created. So when you are viewing the component, when you go to a new page, for example, a different page, when you move from your to do dashboard to it's an employee page, the component will get destroyed. Your Angular will destroy that component. Okay, when you are doing page navigations, when you are moving from one page to another page, so the previous page components will get destroyed, auto destroyed by your AngularJS. So when it destroys it, what it does is it's going to unsubscribe to that event. It does not have to have any subscription. Understood your services? Your services are used for your data sharing across components. Okay, you put the data, all the component will receive the data from your service. Service can make a backend call to get the data. It will call your Java code to get the data. Okay, and then your components can subscribe to the events. Whenever there is a new data available, they will get notified. Okay, you know what, there is new data, you can update the state yourself. Okay, and your onInit, onDestroy are your two lifecycle hooks or lifecycle callback methods, or lifecycle, we call them as hooks. Once a constructor invocation is complete, it will call your onInit method. Okay, if you wanted to do any data initializations, or you wanted to set the component initial state, you can define that inside your onInit method. Your onDestroy method, if you wanted to do any cleanup activities, you can do that in your onDestroy method. Okay, these are interfaces. So since we implement them, we have to override those corresponding functions, ng onInit and ng onDestroy. Okay, and understood your providers. So when you define your providers at your component level, your Angular will create a new instance. Okay, Angular will create a new instance for that component. But if you define it at your module level, your AngularJS is gonna create only one single instance, and then wherever you specify it as a dependency inside your constructor, it will just inject the same instance. Okay, you have two components having just sharing one single instance. Alrighty, you can even test that a little bit more. For example, in your dashboard, let's do a little bit. Let's add providers here and see what happens. Providers. I'm going to say to do service. To do service. So Angular should create a new instance for it. Let's see what happens. If you see, I added a new one, but my count is still 2 because it has two different instances. The instance that your dashboard component is using has still two to-dos. That's why the size is 2. Okay, if you remove your provider section here, so both of the components will use the same to-do service, and then the component will get updated with the new data. What happened? I didn't save it. File save all. It is still 2. Why is that? The component will not get destroyed, right? Because when the component is initialized, it will subscribe to it. Again, let's add some console statements to see. Console.log component is initialized. Let's add one more console log. Component is destroyed. Destroyed. Okay, let's refresh that. More tools. Let's add developer tools. You see, we got component is initialized. So a component is never destroyed. Okay, let's add a to-do item. Enter a to-do item. Let's click on add. Okay, we have an error. Cannot set property count of undefined. Alrighty, let's see what is our problem. Count of undefined. So this here is coming as undefined. Yeah, because it's not arrow function, right? So that's what the problem is. It's not able to bind the this to the component. We have to do dot bind, then it will work, but we don't want that. Let's change that to an arrow function. That should take care of it. Okay, let's add one more. Okay, we have 3 now. Let's add the providers. Providers. To do service. And then if you see there are no errors, but it still the count is 2 because it has its own instance. But if you remove providers here, so both of them will use the same shared instance, and then it will get notified whenever there is a change. So in most of your applications, we generally create your services at provider at the module level because we wanted only one instance of your service. Okay, now we have 3. Beautiful. So it's a very good component application that you can play with when you are learning your services. Okay, let's take a look at. Okay, let's create one more service, and then let's use that service. So let's create a logging service. Let's go. Let's view integrated terminal. Okay, I'm inside my to-do. Let's say ng generate service. The name of the service is logging. Okay, dash spec equal to false. So that way we can observe the dependency of one service from another service. Okay, now let's say our to-do service is dependent upon your logging service. Okay, let's go to your module first and then add your logging service here. Import from dot slash logging dot service. Logging service. Logging dot service dot ts. Yeah, we can remove injectable here for now. Let's see what happens. And then here we can say, let's add a method called log. What it does is it's going to take whatever that you give, and then going to just console it out. Console.log of input. Whatever the input this log method gets, it will just console it out. It's not doing anything. Now we'll take the logging service and then we'll add that as a dependency to your to-do service. Constructor private. Let's add logging service. Logging service. Let's import that as well. Let's copy it from our module in the import statement. There's a typo there. Now if you see our to-do service depends upon your logging service. Okay, so here I'm going to say this dot logging service dot log. I'm going to just say getting to-dos. Okay, then I'm going to add one more statement here. This dot logging service dot adding to-dos, adding a new to-do. Adding a new to-do plus to-do dot description. Alrighty, let's check that now. Okay, we have an error. Property log does not exist on type logging service. Property log. What is property log? It's a method. What did I miss? We have to mark it public. Alrighty, that looks good. I still have some issues. Let's see what it is. No provider for logging service. No provider for logging service. So that's an interesting error. Okay, I need to define my logging service here as well inside my providers. Okay, that looks good. Okay, everything is good. You see I got getting to-dos 2 times. Okay, let's remove that. Let's add a new to-do item. Playing. If you see I got adding a new to-do playing printed onto my console. So the important thing that you have to observe here is a service can actually depend upon another service. My to-do service depends upon my logging service. So whenever there is a dependency on a different service, make sure that you have this injectable annotation here. Very important. Okay, otherwise you don't need injectable annotation here. For example, if you see your logging service does not have any injectable annotation because in your constructor there are no dependencies. But whereas your to-do service depends upon your logging service. That's why we define that inside your constructor. And your at injectable annotation tells your Angular framework that you know what, your to-do service depends upon something else. That something else is nothing but your logging service here. Okay, got it? This is one other small thing that I wanted to mention. Injectable annotation. I think that's pretty much on services. In our next session, we'll talk about routing. Yeah, routing is one of a big topic. Yeah, once we cover routing, and then we have forms. Then what else we have? Pipes. Pipes is small topic. HTTP, and that's pretty much it, I guess. Best practices and other stuff. Okay, that looks good.